We meet at a moment when this country is facing a set of challenges greater than any that we have seen in generations. Right now, our brave men and women in uniform are fighting two different wars while terrorists plot their next attack. Our changing climate is placing our planet in peril. Our economy is in turmoil. I don't need to tell you that. Families struggling with rising costs and falling incomes, with lost jobs and lost homes and a lost faith in the American dream. And for too long, our leaders in Washington have been unable or unwilling to do anything about it. And that's why this election could not be more important. This election is the most important election of our lifetime. When it comes to our economy, our security, and the very future of our planet, the choices we make in November and over the next few years will shape the next decade, if not the next century. And central to all these major challenges is the question of what will we do about our addiction to foreign oil. Without a doubt, this addiction is one of the most dangerous and urgent threats this nation has ever faced. From the gas prices that are wiping out your paychecks and straining businesses to jobs that are disappearing from this state. From the instability and terror bred in the Middle East to the rising oceans and record drought and spreading famine that could engulf our planet. It's also a threat that goes to the very heart of who we are as a nation and who we will be. Will we be the generation that leaves our children a planet in decline, or a world that's clean and safe and thriving? Will we allow ourselves to be held hostage to the whims of tyrants and dictators who control the world's oil wells? Or will we control our own energy and our own destiny? Will America watch as the clean energy jobs and industries of the future flourish in countries like Spain, Japan, or Germany? Or will we create them here, in the greatest country on earth, with the most productive, talented workers in the world? As Americans, we know the answer to these questions. We know that we can't sustain a future powered by a fuel that's rapidly disappearing. Not when we purchase $700 million worth of oil every single day from some of the world's most unstable and hostile nations. Middle East regimes that control nearly all of the world's oil by 2030. Not when the rapid growth of countries like China and India mean that we're consuming more of this dwindling resource faster than we ever imagined. We know that we can't sustain this kind of future. But we also know we've been talking about this issue for decades. We've heard promises about energy independence from every single president since Richard Nixon. We've heard talk about curbing the use of fossil fuels in State of the Union addresses since the oil embargo of 1973. Back then, we imported about a third of our oil. Now, we import more than half. Back then, global warming was a theory of a few scientists. Now, it's a fact that is melting our glaciers and setting off dangerous weather patterns as we speak. Then, back in 1973, the technology and innovation to create a new source of clean, affordable, renewable energy was a generation away. Today, you can find it in the research labs in this university and in design centers of this state's legendary auto industry. It's in the chemistry labs that are laying the building blocks for cheaper, more efficient solar panels. And it's in the reborn factories that are churning out more wind turbines every day all across this country. Despite all this, here we are, in another election, still talking about our oil addiction, still more dependent than ever. Why is that? You won't hear me say this too often, but I could not agree more with the explanation that Senator McCain offered a few weeks ago. He said, and I quote, "Our dangerous dependence on foreign oil has been 30 years in the making and was caused by the failures of politicians in Washington to think long-term about the future of the country." Now, what Senator McCain neglected to mention was during those 30 years, he was in Washington for 26 of them. And in all that time, he did little to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. He voted against increased fuel efficiency standards and opposed legislation that included tax credits for more efficient cars. He voted against renewable sources of energy, against clean biofuels, against solar power, against wind power, against an energy bill that, while far from perfect, represented the largest investment in renewable sources of energy in the history of this country. So when Senator McCain talks about the failure of politicians in Washington to do anything about our energy crisis, it's important to remember that he's been part of that failure. And now, after years of inaction, in the face of public frustration over rising gas prices, the only energy proposal he's really promoting is more offshore drilling, a position he recently adopted that's become the centerpiece of his plan, and one that will not make a real dent in current gas prices or meet the long-term challenge of energy independence. Understand, George Bush's own energy department has said that if we opened up new areas to offshore drilling today, we wouldn't see a single drop of oil for 7 years. 7 years. Senator McCain knows that, which is why he admitted that his plan would only provide, quote, psychological relief to consumers. I know that's what you've been looking for, is psychological relief when you're pumping gas into your car. He also knows that if we opened up and drilled every single square inch of our land and our shores, we would still find only 3% of the world's oil reserves. 3% for a country that uses 25% of the world's oil. Even Texas oil man Boone Pickens, and Boone's not a Democrat, who's calling for major new investments in alternative energy, has said, quote, "This is one emergency we can't drill our way out of." That's Boone Pickens, an oil man, made his money drilling. Now, increased domestic oil exploration certainly has its place as we make our economy more fuel efficient and transition to other renewable American-made sources of energy. But it's not the solution. It's a political answer of the sort Washington has given us for 3 decades. And there are some genuine ways in which we can provide some short-term relief from high gas prices. Relief to the mother who's cutting down on groceries because of gas prices. Or the man I met in Pennsylvania who couldn't go on a job search after he lost his job because he couldn't afford to fill up the tank. I believe we should give every working family in America a $1,000 energy rebate, and we should pay for it with part of the record profits that the oil companies are making right now. I also believe that in the short term, as we transition to renewable energy, we can and should increase our domestic production of oil and natural gas. But we should start by telling the oil companies to drill on the 68 million acres they currently have access to but haven't touched. And if they don't use it, they should lose it. We should require them to give up their leases to somebody who's going to do something. That's common sense. We should invest in the technology that can help us recover more from existing oil fields, speed up the process of recovering oil and gas resources from shale formations in Montana and North Dakota, in Texas and Arkansas, and in parts of the West and Central Gulf of Mexico. We should sell 70 million barrels of oil from our strategic petroleum reserve for less expensive crude, which in the past has lowered gas prices within 2 weeks. Over the next 5 years, we should also lease more of the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska for oil and gas production. And we should also tap more of our substantial natural gas reserves and work with the Canadian government to finally build the Alaska natural gas pipeline, delivering clean natural gas and creating good jobs in the process. So these are all some short-term steps that we could take right now to provide families some immediate relief. And I know you need immediate relief. You need immediate relief. But the truth is, none of these steps will come close to seriously reducing our energy dependence in the long term. We can't simply pretend, as Senator McCain does, that we can drill our way out of this problem. T. Boone Pickens is right. We need a much bolder and much bigger set of solutions. We have to make a serious nationwide commitment to developing new sources of energy, and we have to do it right away. Right now. We cannot wait. Now, last week, Washington finally made some progress on this. A group of Democrat and Republican senators came down and came up with a compromise on energy that includes many of the proposals that I've worked on as a senator and many of the steps I've been calling on during the course of this campaign. It's a plan that would invest in renewable fuels and batteries for fuel-efficient cars, help automakers retool, and make a real investment in renewable sources of energy. And like all compromises, this one has its drawbacks. It does include a limited amount of new offshore drilling. And while I still don't believe that's a particularly meaningful short-term or long-term solution, what I've said is I'm willing to consider it if it's necessary to actually pass a comprehensive plan. I'm not interested in making the perfect the enemy of the good, particularly since there's so much good in this compromise that would actually reduce our dependence on foreign oil. And yet, while the compromise is a good first step and a good faith effort, I believe that we have to go even further. And here's why. Breaking our oil addiction is one of the greatest challenges our generation will ever face. It is going to take nothing less than the complete transformation of our economy. The transformation is going to be costly, and given the fiscal disaster we will inherit from the next generation, the last administration, it will likely require us to defer some other priorities. It's also a transformation that will require more than just a few government programs. Energy independence will require an all-hands-on-deck effort from America, efforts from scientists and entrepreneurs, from businesses, and from every American citizen. Factories will have to retool and redesign. Businesses will need to find ways to emit less carbon dioxide. All of us will need to buy more fuel-efficient cars built by this state of Michigan. Built right here in Lansing, built all across the state of Michigan. All of us will need to find new ways to improve efficiency and save energy in our own homes and businesses. And none of this is going to be easy. It's not going to happen overnight. If anyone tries to tell you otherwise, they are either fooling themselves or they're trying to fool you. But I know we can do this. We can do this because we're Americans. We always do the improbable. We always beat great odds. We always rally together whatever challenge stands in our way. That's what we've always done, and that's what we must do now. For the sake of our economy, our security, and the future of our planet, we must end the age of oil in our time. Now, creating a new energy economy isn't just a challenge to meet, it's also an opportunity to seize, and that's what people like your governor and your senators and your congressmen have been talking about for years now. It's an opportunity that will create new businesses, new industries, and millions of new jobs. Jobs that pay well, jobs that can't be outsourced, good union jobs. Which is what we need right here in Michigan. For a state that has lost so many jobs and struggled so much in recent years, this is an opportunity to rebuild and revive the economy. As Governor Granholm has said, anytime you pick up a newspaper and see the terms climate change or global warming, just think jobs for Michigan. You're already seeing the potential. Already, there are 50,000 jobs in your clean energy sector, right here in Michigan. Already 300 companies, including Michelle's, that are creating jobs all across the state. Now's the time to accelerate that growth, both here and across the nation. So if I am president, I will immediately direct the full resources of the federal government and the full energy of the private sector, working with state and local governments to achieve a single overarching goal. In 10 years, we will eliminate the need for oil from the entire Middle East and Venezuela. In 10 years' time. 10 years is how long it's going to take. 10 years is how long it's going to take.